So I'm going to talk fast and slow, because I have to get to the airport and all that. So I want you to be with me. Is that okay to do? Can I have permission to do that? I may laugh, I may cry. Can I just be me? Then that's what I'll do. And the energy, I welcome it all. And so a couple of thoughts that I wanted to say just based on, the panel was outstanding, number one. So a hand for the panel. So just a couple of thoughts that come from that for me, and one was, I guess, one of the questions that maybe came from over here, maybe my friend Kay asked a question about just where do you go for the men? And I love the response of the panel, but can I just highlight what they were really saying too? It's really just creating space and place for fathers, just like here, making room for daddy. That's most important. So wherever our mamas are, wherever our children are, we'll be there. We just got to make sure we feel comfortable when we come. So in addition to those wonderful places, I just like the idea of making space and place. And when they feel welcome, and then what we heard from Patrick and everyone else, do the connection. It's a natural thing, just connecting with people and be authentic with that. So that was one thing that I wanted to say. And I've been working in the maternal child health space for about 35 years or so. So I'm at that age, and so where's Clifton? I also want to thank him. That was a fantastic presentation as well on X, Y, and Z. But when you've been around for a long time, you've seen a few things, and I can tell you that this has been a wonderful space to be in, but at the entire time that I've been here, we've been focusing on fatherhood and fathers. So the Healthy Start program, which is a federal initiative that addresses infant mortality and now maternal mortality, we knew over 30 years ago that fathers were important. So those 15 programs that started in 1991 started out doing fatherhood, and it was a struggle for 3 decades. But I'm very happy to say not only did the 15 programs grow to 101 around the country now that are in urban, rural, and tribal and border communities, but those 15 programs that are now 101 are in urban, rural, and tribal areas in this country. And fatherhood now, after 30 years, you talk about how long does it take to bring that change. Well, for the Maternal Child Health Bureau, it was over 30 years before we are where we are today. So I want to talk about the opportunity of today. Today, those 101 programs are focusing on fatherhood, and this is the first time in this country's history, federal government history, that fatherhood is a required component within a maternal child health program. So that's what it looks like. We don't necessarily need new money. We need to go back to those places that are funding and supporting our women and our children and just tell them to make space for daddy, right? And that's what we need. So those 101 programs, all of them have had the opportunity to hire a male fatherhood coordinator working within those programs, and that's what you heard from the panel today. That's what Kevin was responding to. We need to put a commitment, and that means putting resources in place and space where men can be there, because men are going to respond to men. We know that. And then also, I'm happy to say that our friend, and I say our friend because Dr. Jeff Johnson, who's been doing this work for 40 years, 4 decades, and he's the president and CEO of the National Center for Community Leadership. He just had his conference, 20-something, I forget which one, 21st conference this June, and the theme of that conference was celebrating women and fatherhood. So women in the room that support men and fathers, give yourselves a hand as well, because we do this together. And that's why I'm glad that we're together today. So I want you to think about what Clifton said, because I think the context of what we want to do and really do some really identifying some strategies, some skill, some activities that we need to do moving forward. But I definitely want us to go back to the X, Y, and Z, and even before that, the boomers. So again, if you was born between 1946 and 64, that boomer generation, right? If you're 81 to 96, you know you're part of the X. And then, of course, 96 to 2012, you're part of the, 1981, that is, to 96, you're Y, and then 1996, you're Z. And then I also want to call out the A's, because I saw A's over these last couple of days, and there are children that are 10 and under, so give it up for the A's in the room. And the A's that are in the belly right now for this year as well, because we need to pay attention. And I don't know about you, if you saw last year's Time magazine when they honored the Youth of the Year, Omaron Jones. Did you all see him on the cover? 10 years old, and there are other 10-year-olds that are doing incredible things because they want to really make change, and not just want to make change, they're doing change at ages 10. So I definitely want to talk about that today as well. So a couple of other things I just wanted to get out. I also, in my conversation, this again stimulating from this morning's talk and the panel, Calvin said something that I wanted to lift up again. Dads are not an add-on. So when you try to add them onto your program, that does not work. That's why you heard the word inclusion. He's not an add-on. I can tell you for 30 years, that's what people want to do. They just want to add him on. We're not an add-on. We're part of the family. So that's very important. And I also want us to look back on our elders and learn and lift up the Policy Link organization in California. And I know that Mama Bug and many other you know, Dr. Angela Glover, and now it's headed by Michael McAvee, Dr. McAvee, at Policy Link. And that is a Black-started, led, run organization that's been around for decades. But they have a saying, lifting up what works. And when I met them over 25 years ago, I adopted that saying too. We need to lift up what's working. We heard from Dr. McLemore right on Monday. People were looking for evidence-based. Somebody else, white folks, want to validate our stuff. But there's stuff that's happening in our communities, and we need to lift up that stuff that's working. Somebody say, amen. That's the only thing you can say to that. You can't just say yes. You have to say amen. Let's lift up what's working. And so again, we want to talk about some things that we need to do, things that you may be doing that are working, and we need to lift those things up and spread them. Amen? All right, I won't say amen again, I swear. But that's real for me, lifting up what's worked. And so thank you again for this great opportunity to be with you. In this picture, that's me many, many years ago. You saw Colton's video. He's 30, he'll turn 30 in December. But this is him when he was a little guy. And Colton came here early. He was in NICU. And so I, again, heard from the panel, we all have our stories. And so I have a NICU story about Colton. And I was working for Healthy Start at the time, and I was a breastfeeding educator. So back in the day, we were doing that with the March of Dimes. And I remember being the only male, never mind a black male, in the space and doing work there. And so Angela is my wife, and I've been married to Angela for 33 years. I courted her for 6 years before that. And I want you to know that she's the only woman that I've ever been with, if you know what I mean. And I will tell you, I am just as excited now as I was on my honeymoon night. And I can't wait to see her when I get back home, because more than 3 days, this just ain't right. But we had Colton. I was told I had waited all my life to get married, you all. You know how I was, I grew up a little church boy. I was like, stay clean, stay clean. But my brother, one of my brothers a year older than I am, he was a teen dad. And that tore the house up, right, back in the day. And I said, well, I'm really gonna keep to myself after what he went through. But I wanted children. We got married and discovered that we're not having children after year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. And I finally had to accept. And I went to the doctor, all of that, and they said, you won't be able to have children. The chances are very, very slim. I was devastated. I was like, I could have been out there. No, I didn't say that. I really didn't say that. I told you. Oh, and there was Danielle at the prom. Who begged me. I was like, no. I was devastated. And God was good, because once I relaxed, I started working with kids. I was working with the youth at the time. I had all these young people around me. I became content, because I knew what my purpose was actually in life. And we got pregnant, and Colton comes along. But he was born early, and we were excited to breastfeed. And some of you that know me, I've shared my breastfeeding trauma with you and what happened in the hospital, because Angela went into distress, and she was separated from Colton. He was in a NICU. She pumped a little bit. I got the little bottle. I went down and fed him, and I was trying to advocate for her, and at some point I was told to stop bothering them. Your wife just can't do it, is what they told me. And I had to tell her, and she was crying. It was just horrible, and that was, again, 1992. Years later, not years later, months later, we got pregnant earlier than expected, and so with our second child, and we lost Austin, and she was 5.5 months pregnant. That was the night I almost lost her, as well as the baby, because she was rushed into the OR and was bleeding where they couldn't stop the bleeding. I can tell you every single step that we took from the doctor's office to the OR, as I watched blood dripping on the hospital floor from the gurney, and then also my experience afterwards at the hospital and how I was treated. And you heard up here when you're in these institutions, hospitals, where I think the young man, I forget who said it, but how you get treated. You have to be careful, because I'm a black man that's a little upset, and I became a danger and a threat. And I was threatened that night that I need to calm down. And if not, they would call the authorities. Thank God Angela did not die, but there are many women that die. My friend Charles Johnson, his wife passed away. And there are many others. And so that's like my story that I want to bring to this conversation, because I really want us to be serious and be thoughtful in this moment as we let all that information for the last couple of days, and especially what we've heard from men this morning, kind of sit, and I want to just generate some ideas and thoughts so that we can really talk about specific action that needs to be done. Is that all right? All right, let's go for it. So, Angela, I'm Kenn, partner of Angela, and I'm using that intentionally because it's nice to have the identity as being the partner of. And that's what I tell men when they go into the hospital. I am so-and-so, you can say husband of, but partner of. And I like saying partner because something else happens when you say, I'm her partner. And people respond a bit differently. So I'm the partner of Angela, and I love my identity as Colton's father. Y'all let me brag a little bit in the morning, and don't even get me talking about my son. Sometimes people that I talk, like last week, someone said, oh, well, how's your baby? Is he about 4 or 5? I was like, he's 30. You know, they're like, you talk about him like he's a little baby. I said, and I will forever, because I am happy to be a father. And so celebrating all the fathers in this room. And so I would like for the men that are fathers, there are many programs connected to Rose, just to stand up in a room, and I would like everyone to look at these men that are in the room now. Those that are in the room, please stand. Fathers all over the room. Those that are working with these fathers, just take a look at them. Is that a male child, right? Your son? And that's the youngest male. What's his name? Xander. Xander Alexander. Oh, Max, all right. But just to acknowledge the youngest in the room, and I'm bringing that up for a reason. You know, it was in 1972, all those years ago, and we're in 2022, but in 1972, repeat after me, mother, mother. What's the next line? Too many of you are what? Crying. Brother, brother, brother. Far too many of you are dying. There's far too many dying. And we know we have to find a way to bring some what? Loving here today. Talk about healing, talk about taking care of people, community. Love is what's up. What's going on? So that question was asked decades ago. And isn't it a shame that we're still asking the same question about black folks? Because our brothers are still dying. Our mothers are still crying. So it's something to think about. So I'm going to stimulate you a little bit, but just to go back. Remember I told you I'm the kind of guy that looks back to leap forward? How many remember I said that? Okay, well, let's go back so we can go forward. And I want you to have some joy. And tell me if this looks familiar. Raise your hand when it gets familiar to you.
Greater than yourself.
I don't know if there's some generations that don't remember that, but you might want to check it out. You Google it. I feel like we're in a time now, 'cause when Roots came out, you all, I remember being in, I think I was in high school. White people were really scared. That's what I remember from that time. The people at the ice cream store we went to was very nice. Mr. Evans was giving us extra ice cream. We didn't have to pay for it. They were walking on eggshells. It's like, did you want you? Because it was on like every night or something. They was like, they were afraid. As Monday came, Tuesday, they got scared and scared. I know it's not a word. But you felt it because they sensed something was about to change. I'm hoping people are going to start feeling that same thing now that we're in this moment that we're in, where it's time to make that change. And people need to be aware that we are awake. And like in The Wiz, remember they were coming out of them suits? That's what I feel like, and I hope that you feel that as well. So let's not forget Alex Haley and the work that he did for many of us. So I was asked to answer a couple of questions, and you're going to help me do that. Dr. Bug wanted me to answer, where do we go from here? We've had a couple of days, powerful information has been shared with us. There are powerful people in the room from this end to that because you're still here. So where do we go from here? So a couple of ideas, and then I'm going to ask you to share. The one thing I thought, where do we go? We go back and we share it. Will you be committed to go back and share the things you've learned over these last days? You have to. You have to. That's the first thing we can do, to go back. Where do we go from here? How many know we need to go to the next level now? That's another thing. We have to take this to the next level. I think those of us that fund programs, those that run programs, those that design programs, those that evaluate programs, every single, let's take it to the next level. That's why I think we go from here. And the last thought I had about where do we go from here, I say go hard. I'm going to tear this stuff up. That's what I'm up to, is I'm trying to retire early, so I'm trying to get it in before I get out of here. So people that know me the last couple of years, they say, you've been going hard. I say, absolutely. When I get done, because you know that last stretch, I'm going hard. And so how many are in a place where you can commit to going hard? I know too much now. You can't even shut me. You can't. If you push me, squeeze me, something's coming out. So go hard. So where do we go from here? So that's a context of thinking about where we go from here. The other piece I was asked to think about was, what is strategic planning needed to improve maternal morbidity and mortality? And let me emphasize morbidity because that came up this week too. We forget the morbidity part. Our families that deal with morbidity, our children, when they grow with respiratory problems, which is an issue in this country for our communities that are in environmentally unsafe places all over the country. But when you leave the hospital, you have to get the machine. So we've been talking about expensive breast pumps, but how many of those machines, breathing machines, are expensive too for your children? And trying to get them, that's a whole challenge. And so this morbidity, what are we doing? How are we supporting and helping each other, even in that phase? So strategies, strategic planning. So I think we do need strategies, and that's what we're going to talk about in a moment. Can anyone say strategies? Strategies. We need some strategies. So I'm going to give you broad strategies, and then we're going to talk about underneath. Because strategies are great, but how many know they need action? People love telling that strategy. I'm like, good for you. What are you actually doing? Those sub-bullets underneath? Yeah, the action. That's what I'm interested in. So broad strategies to me, one is to make him visible. That's a strategy I'm living right now. You're looking at someone who's living strategy. Make him visible. That's the first thing to do. That's a good strategy. In every place, every level, doesn't matter, continuum, just make him visible because you've rendered him invisible. There was an assault on black fathers, black men. So I'm responding to the assault, and you can tell I'm not happy about it. So one of the strategies is, you've made him invisible, well, I'm here to make him visible. That's a strategy. Reclaim and restore black fatherhood. They lied to me. My daddy did love me. We had this growing up. But like Patrick, I had this moment with my dad. For years, I kept going back to Dad, let's get this right, let's get this right, what's going on? And the time that he told me he was sorry, I was 27 years old. We were at this, probably the 10th breakfast I took him to resolve our issues. And he would never acknowledge anything, because back then they was told, don't show your emotions. Patrick told us, right? He didn't share anything. That's what drove me nuts. Like, man, come on. But that day he finally said, I'm sorry. I was a strong man by then, right? When he said, I'm sorry, I've been waiting for years, I started crying and my pancakes got soggy, y'all. I was like, I went in. It was just something else to see. But that's all I wanted to hear from him, right? But we were connected and we built a great relationship. My dad died a few years ago. And I tell you, but that moment was significant in transitioning our relationship and transforming it for the rest of us. So I love him and got so much from him. And I, like Patrick, do this work because of my father. Because of our challenging life, in high school and college, every English paper I wrote about my dad. And I got an A on every single paper because I talked about his story, which I knew, of him with his wife, 5 children, leaving the South, coming up north with $300. And in a couple of years, we owned a store. My mother ended up opening up a hair salon, had a successful business for 35 years. We had a great life because of my father. And lastly, I celebrate Black joy. So we have to celebrate, which is what I shared with you. So let's ask the question, especially of you fathers that are here and those that work with fathers. There's a couple of things I want to ask you, just to get some answers out in the atmosphere. But what do you see as your need right now as a father? What are some of the needs that you see, or men that work with fathers, the needs that you have seen? What are some of the needs out there? Just yell them out. Kevin? Employment, big one. What's some other needs? What's that? Normalization of Black male professionals. Very good. Acknowledgement. Yep. Access to quality health care. Understanding of the emotions. Absolutely. What's that one? There's a lack of understanding about it, so we need more understanding. Communication. Relationship with partners. So healthy relationship, learning how to have healthy relationships, good. Intentionality. Mental health. Hold on, I'm good. Education about their rights so they can better advocate, absolutely. Okay, so those that have programs, these are the types of things that fatherhood programs should have. And Kenn Scarborough and I create a model for fatherhood programs. And that's one of the things, number one, men's health is important before he can engage in anything. And it's health in the broadest sense. So mental health, physical health, financial health, all of those. So if you have a good fatherhood program, then you need to be focused on his health in its entirety. And so you want to build a strong fatherhood program, then you need to address his health on the broadest context. And then we talk about how to engage him on that continuum. The healthy relationship, that's another really essential component in fatherhood programs, because many don't know how to communicate already, and now they're in a relationship, now they're not in a relationship anymore, now they have a child, it's hard. Mm-hmm. 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 And that came up in the panel. Yes. So not judging a book by its cover was stated again, and we had the example of how someone has come in and they dress down as opposed to in a suit or what have you, and they became more comfortable in the atmosphere, but other people may misjudge that. But it was someone who actually had all their stuff in order. So in other words, we just shouldn't be judging anything. There are people that are in suits. I was going to say don't have no education, just don't have any sense. Because I know many in suits with the education and they ain't got no sense. That's all. But yes, okay? Yes? Okay, let me go over here, then I'll go over there. Yep, Carol? Some people don't. Two-generation strategies. Do we ever think about fathers in that strategy? Now, I like 2Gen, and that was, they started funding 2Gen because it was a new topic of the month and flavor of the month. But the reality is, just as we've heard from Clifton, is it just 2 generations we're talking about? Or 4 or 5? And if you're from certain culture, then we're talking 7. So I like 2Gen, but we have to think about them across the whole continuum. The whole continuum. Now, someone's over here, you said? Oh. Health equity. Yeah, that's the whole concept. The advocate, absolutely. Absolutely, thank you. So focusing on health equity and him learning so that he can actually be an advocate for his partner or wife. And so quickly, I'm going to put this out there because, again, it's important to lift this up. As we go forward, what do we need as we go? Wherever we go, these men can't take us there is what I want to say. And you heard from about some of those men earlier. We don't need Superman. How many know he does not exist? So again, men that think they're Superman, there's no Superman. So again, acknowledging where we are so we actually get the help that we need, right? You're not a Superman. There's no such thing. We don't need Batman, hiding behind masks, but still deal with your trauma. You're violent. So we don't need Batman. Somebody said we don't need Batman either. He can't take us there. We certainly don't need Spider-Man just sticking here every now and then, swinging over here, swinging over there. Cut that out, Spider-Man. And Iron Man, you think I don't need nobody. How many know we all need somebody? So again, when we're working with men, even for those of us that are here, that thought you were a Superman, I'm not what I used to be physically, but I used to. No, I'm just kidding. I never had that physique. But there's some men that think they're so strong because we have to be. That's what we're taught. You heard that from Patrick in the panel today. But that's not who's going to take us there. That's not going to help our young fathers get there. We don't and cannot be Superman. So we don't need those men. Now, we need these men here. And I want you to give them applause. You all saw them already. Right? These men are doing it. Robe. There's no other robe in this country. Reaching our brothers everywhere, not just here in the United States, but I see this international if it's not already. But those are the type of men that we need. And they didn't even talk about their book, which I'm mad, but they have the book is out. Those essays, the stories of these men, we need to know who they are, and these are the men we need in the work. And I can tell you from 30 years of doing this, those are the type of men we need running programs, helping pull everyone in the community together. So it's important to know we don't need those other men. These are the type of men that we need. So if you were confused, that's what we need. You're clear now, yep? And I definitely want to say there's research that's coming out now, and I'm connecting with others to do more of this research with fathers and breastfeeding. Fathers, they know that breastfeeding is good. So the education, bring it on. But as the young lady said here, when they understand better, how many know they go tell their friends? Men beget men. Once they get some information, they give it to the brothers, and next thing you know, they're all on board for it. So let's continue to educate these fathers because they actually understand once they get this information. So the effectiveness of targeting partners for promotion of breastfeeding is working, and we have research now. We'll continue to bring it out. And again, I look for Robe doing more of it. There's that sign. All right. Wow. So you guys, you know what I did this morning and what I do as a regular? Just watch for a moment because there's a couple of things I want to say before I stop. And I use pictures just in case I have to shut up, so. Rose, thank you. Being visible. So I'm talking to you, Father. Be visible. Learn to speak up. Get what you need so you can talk up when you go to those visits. Reclaim and restore Black father. Tell others how important it is, because if we don't begin to talk about the value of our Black men in our communities, then others will continue to devalue him. And celebrate Black brothers. I love what Brother Carl is doing. We need a life course approach. That's a strategy. It's not just him in front of you. It's thinking about boyhood all the way up to adulthood. So that's one of the baddest things going. Boy, man, father talks. I love it because that's what we need, life course, right? Those that are around for a while, remember the Negro report from the Moynihan Report? Well, let's lift up brothers like Kenneth Braswell, who established the Moynihan Institute for Fatherhood, where they're focused on research with black fathers, because what they left out is why black fathers are in the state that they're in now, because of the historical context of this. This is something you can't see, but brother is mad, but we are mad. I'll lift up people like Charles Johnson. So we talk about maternal mortality. Again, it's important to understand what that is. And he is the founder of For Cure for Moms, which is his wife who passed away. And he led the milestone legislation, the H.R. 1318 legislation around maternal mortality. So brothers, we have brothers out there doing it. There are many in this room that have stories. And so we need more men talking about maternal mortality. And that's what he's done, become an advocate. You could do that. That's something we can start doing more of. And the other thing I want to emphasize here, understanding infant and maternal mortality, it's really being with these children and women a year out, because a woman could die even a year after postpartum. So that's what people don't, they think it's just 3 months. No, we're talking about women, our women are dying. 60% of them that die should not die in that first year. So again, there's lots of work to do there. Amari Maynard, you all have to watch Aftershock. This is another brother we want to lift up. Thank you, Kay. I was, a few weeks ago, I was in Houston on a panel with him, and he shared his story, and he's creating art. People try to push us down, but as my son said to me, you can't keep us down. He's doing art. What came out of that tragedy, he's doing art as a way of lifting up that story. So if you get a chance, watch it. I had a clip for you, but we don't have time for that. But if you don't watch the whole movie, try to just investigate a little bit, because enough is told there. Let's fight for birthing justice. That's why I put that over and over. You get into it. Get into this fight for birthing justice. If you're in it, then stay in it and stay strong, because the window's open for us to do a lot more than we have been doing. I'm talking to the brothers. This panel this morning, Kay's conference she had, where she just had a panel of men talking. Do that more in your communities. Just let men talk. I think that works. I've been around the country. It works, just bringing men together and letting them talk. So talk with the brothers. And let's continue to do what this conference represents. Doing it what? Together. I lifted up Jeff Johnson, but I have to lift up Dr. Ron Mincy and those that have been around for decades. Remember the Fragile Family Study, that longitudinal study? If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't be looking at black families the way we're looking at them today. But we know that poverty impacts our families, and we know the historical context. So just wanted to lift them up, and there's a new book that's coming out, which I was blessed to write the foreword to. But you want to know the history of fatherhood in this country, that's a book that you want to get. If you're going to design a program, if you're running a program, and if you're a person who wants to benefit from a program, that's a good book to look at. So Stronger Together is what I want to say. Lastly, fighting for their lives, we have to look at what's happening with our black boys. If we're talking about fatherhood and black fatherhood, look at what's happening with this. Studies that let us know black bodies are being policed in the streets and in the classroom. That's a problem. Is that a problem for you? So is there not a cause for justice? So I told you about Omicron. Okay. These I did so you can have them later, so I wasn't planning on talking about all of this, but the timeline I wanted to give you, all the barriers that there are to men connecting to their families and their children. We have to remove those barriers. You've heard inclusion, connection, engagement. That's what it's really about. And again, remember the P's and in between the B's. So preconception, preconception, pregnancy, birth, postpartum, all of that. And we talk about postpartum, remember, men get postpartum depression too, okay? And I had that one. We're trying to avert prison. So we don't want that P, right? Prison, you all know what's happening in this country, but number one, Louisiana. Oklahoma. What's number three? Mississippi. I heard it. What's number four? Arkansas. Yeah, it's terrible, okay? Thank you for today. We've gotten to today. We want to at least get to 2030. Our hands are extended for our fathers, and he's running to get there for a better place. Let's join him in the race, continue to run with him. How many want to run with fathers, black fathers? I'm running with you, and we are going to go beyond. Last thing I'll say, The lion's story will never be told if the hunter continues to tell it. Black men, black fathers, let's tell our own stories. Thank you all very much.